Okay. So yeah, today I'll be presenting a piece of research that we're currently working on at E4S. This is called Assessing the Cost of Nature Loss for Technology. It's gonna be a white paper that is gonna be coming out next week, and I've been working on this with a couple of my students. Dario is here in the room, Filippo, and then our co-directors Jean-Philippe and Jean-Pierre. So basically, the paper has two main things. One is an idea, and one is an application of that idea. So the idea is we'd like to use satellites to estimate the local impact on nature of companies' facilities. So very much related to what you just heard from Alsim. And how much does this nature loss cost? All right? And to do that, we're gonna look at how much does it cost to restore this nature loss. And then secondly, we are proposing to create a funding system by which these nature negative companies can repay this cost of nature loss by funding restoration projects for a fund. We do the application of that idea by considering vegetation, a very specific aspect of nature and biodiversity. And then we focus on Glencore, a big mining company, and the Antamina extraction site in Peru that was built in the 1990s. And we try to use the satellites to assess the vegetation loss and its cost around that facility. So first of all, why do we do nature monitoring? For three main things. The first one is to assess the current status of nature. As you heard from Thomas from IUCN, is very bad. Secondly, we need it because policymakers are setting targets for nature, and so we need to assess that. And thirdly, we need it because investors who invest for nature, using Simon's wording, need to know how much their investment is producing, and so we need to monitor that. As policymakers are setting targets for nature restoration, we also get an idea how much those targets would cost, how much does it cost to reach them. And currently, there is a huge, what's called biodiversity financing gap. So the money that we need to put in from the current scenario in which we are into going towards 2030 to make those targets, to reach those targets. The point here is that most of the funds are public today. So 86% of them, they come from public funds, and only 14% come from private funds. So what we'll try to do in this paper is give away a tool for companies from the private sector to invest into nature restoration and try to close this financing gap. One way, just to put things into context, what we're proposing is not new. So there's already programs out there that force companies to invest in nature restoration. One of them is called biodiversity offsets. You see here the various programs. A biodiversity offset is the second on from the left. And then what it tells is that new infrastructure projects must limit their impact on biodiversity with a hierarchy of actions, which is avoid, mitigate, and offset. Okay? This is in place in more than 100 countries today. What we're saying is that this is quite decentralized. Okay, so that's the problem right now. And so what we're trying to give is a complementary system or a fund to make it more homogeneous. Okay, so we're not trying to substitute anything. We're just trying to give a tool to make it better and work with companies like Holcim or Glencore and other companies of the world that are trying to measure their own biodiversity impact. Right, so the idea, as I told you, is estimate the local impact of a company's facility on nature and then estimate this cost. So there is a cost of, if you want, using natural resources, that will estimate through how much does it cost to restore it, so the restoration cost. And finally, we're gonna have a system in which the company pays this cost into a fund that reinvests in nature with two main mechanisms. One, we suggest payments for past nature loss, so what companies did in the past, and one for what's coming in the future, okay? Or what's coming now or will be coming in the future, which is more like an offsetting lag systems. Right, so here is a little kind of graph of what we try to do. So that's the Antamina site in Peru. That's an extraction site that is owned by the company Glencore. And what we do is we use satellites to estimate the vegetation loss computed in these EVI points. I'll tell you what that is, and then associate that to Glencore on a basis of ownership. the way it works with satellite is that plants, they emit near-infrared lights when they do the photosynthesis, and you can see this from the satellites. And so you can build an index that goes from -1 to 1 that is called Enhanced Vegetation Index that measures the amount of vegetation based on the mesophyll and chlorophyll. And we go back in time until 1984. This is how Antamina looks like today. Glencore has ownership of 33%, and it was created in 1998. That's how you see from the satellites before and after. As you can see, before there was kind of a mountain, and after there's no longer the mountain and the vegetation. And this is how you see it from the infrared. It's a representation of what the index does. And so this index decreased by 48%. And what we also do is we compare this in another control location to control for natural loss of vegetation. So we do that for the Antamina site. And then we also, so to estimate the cost, what do? We need to understand how much does it cost to restore the same amount of vegetation. And so we look at the restoration project, the Instituto Terra in Brazil, that kind of restore the same amount of vegetation, and they put $5.2 million to do it. And so we say that proportionally, that's $5.7 million to recreate the vegetation loss in the Antamina site. Which then assigned to Glencore gives a $1.92 million of vegetation debt, if you wish. We can do it for many sites of Glencore. This is pretty imprecise right now, but what turns out is that Glencore has a vegetation debt of $260 million that should pay into a fund for the system that we propose that then invests into restoration projects. Next steps. So this is far from perfect right now. It's preliminary. And what we have to do is increase the accuracy. So working with Glencore in this case, that they have the on-site measurements. Secondly, we need to work with companies in Switzerland to increase the accuracy of the sample size of the nature-positive product. We need to extend all of this to biodiversity, not only vegetation. Those are the companies in Switzerland we can work with. These are the startups that will be pitching after me. They do on-site measurements of biodiversity. We need to include other companies. We need to create the fund. It's just an example of the people that we can work with to do it. And then we need to link it with a registry. So thank you so much for your attention. And I'll be joining back to talk with the startups.
Thank you.
Okay.